Do you want to know what the secret is to dealing with your mental health? Come here. Thank you to all of those who have subscribed recently. That has been a huge boost. Don't think that we haven't noticed. We love the comments, we love the engagement, we love the views, and the thing that helps us the most is every time our subscribers go up, we reach more people and we're able to keep producing higher quality videos. So please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and let's get on to the show. Welcome to Bear It All, the Kintsugi Chronicles, here on the I Am Not Okay channel, where we gather our broken pieces in search of gold. My name is John Bear, and today I am flying solo. MJ Bear and Holly Bear are joining us in spirit. And today's topic is me and how fucked up I am. And if you have just clicked on the Bear It All podcast for the first time, what I want you to take out of this episode and all of the episodes that you might listen to is that I know that you are not okay. I am not okay. And I know deep down inside, if you were honestly truthful with yourself, even if you didn't say, I am not okay, you know deep down inside that you're not. That there is something weighing heavily on your heart that you have not talked about, that you have not dealt with, and you know it is holding you back from actually being at your best in every single interaction in your life. That's what I want you to take out of today's podcast. You are not alone. I am just as fucked up and probably more fucked up. And today, I am going to tell you exactly why I am fucked up, how I am fucked up, why I think I became fucked up, and what I'm doing about being fucked up. The truth is, for me, if I look back to my childhood, I can start to see the patterns clearly. I came from an angry, abusive, secretive, manipulative family unit. Essentially, it was easier to lie and to be abusive than it was to go against the norm of the pattern. I have sat up here in previous episodes and I have talked about people in my family. And I have said that they have done things to me and it hurt. Well, today I'm going to talk about the things that I have done that I know have hurt others. I was an angry little boy growing up. I was also a very shy, introverted, quiet little boy as well. Apparently, when I was 8 years old, my kindergarten teacher went to my mom and told my mom that I am a somber little boy at 8 years old. At 8 years old, I was diagnosed with severe depression. Can you imagine that? 8 years old, being told that you have severe depression. What is an 8-year-old supposed to do with that? How am I supposed to manage in this world thinking that my brain is broken? What does an 8-year-old even know about depression? These are some of the questions that if I could turn my interviewing lens on myself, which I'm going to, I would start attacking. And I shouldn't say, maybe attack isn't the right word, that I would start unearthing what's really underneath If I was told at 8 years old that I had depression, what happened to lead up to that? Well, we've talked about it in previous episodes. My parents divorced very early on, and I ended up spending the majority of my time with one of my parents and not the other. The parent that I ended up spending the majority of my time with was physically abusive. The parent that I didn't end up spending a lot of time with allowed that to happen, or at least wasn't able to stop it. I don't believe anybody in my family actually wanted to hurt me. I just don't know that they know how to stop hurting themselves. That's what I've learned about my family. I come from a place where it is easier, as I said, to join the abuse than it is to face the abuse. This podcast is an attempt to face the abuse, because I can tell you, being angry, manipulating people, lying to myself, and perpetuating the abuse, for me, I became so aware of what that was doing to my body, meaning when you lie to survive, your body is giving you signals. Maybe your heart starts racing and your blood starts pumping faster and your breath gets shallower and you hear the rush of blood in between your eardrums, or you get that sudden sense of and then you suppress it anyway. That's what it's like to push past your boundaries. To lie to somebody in order to survive became a mechanism that I and you most likely used so that you stopped hurting, so that people would stop hurting you. You learned to lie to others. You also learned to lie to yourself and to stop listening to the signals that your body and your mind were giving off. And then it becomes normal after a while to slip into the same pattern because that's what you have gotten used to. And so it is easier to maintain abuse than it is to, again, to face it. So I'll start right there back at the beginning. I said at 8 years old, I was diagnosed with depression. So what happened to me before the year of 8 years old in order for me to fall into a depression? So I was told by members in my family that I was abused as a baby, meaning I was hit at 2 and 3 years old. Apparently I had a scar right underneath my right eye that I can still see when the light hits it properly, which isn't very often, and it's a very small scar. However, one day I noticed it. I asked some members of my family, hey, did something happen to me when I was a kid? I don't remember hurting my face in football or some other scratch that I might have picked up as a kid. And one of my family members told me that I was hit in the face as a baby after throwing my bottle in the car. Somebody turned around, smacked me in the face, and they were wearing a ring on their finger, and they caught me with their ring. That was at 2 years old. There were either two modes in my household growing up. Things were either chaotic and big and loud, and everybody was screaming and yelling at each other, or it was silent. And so I learned that bad things didn't happen to me, or less bad things happened to me, the more silent and quiet things were inside the house. When there was an argument, when there was a fight, when something had happened, and I could hear the people in my life getting bigger and louder and angrier and starting to scream and shout, I would end up retreating to my room and playing with toys. As apparently I was found several times alone in my room, most likely getting away from the loudness of the noise in order to not get hit, to not get hurt, to not be in the middle of the commotion. That's what I found myself doing a lot, was when there was commotion, when there was loudness, I would do whatever I had to do to get away from it, even if that meant to lie and say that I was okay when I wasn't. I would tell people in my family, yeah, I'm okay, no problem, everything's fine. When in reality, I didn't know how to tell them that I was hurting, that I was scared, that I didn't know why we were yelling at each other, and I didn't understand what had happened after the yelling was done, and I couldn't hear anything anymore because I'd still hear all that yelling in the back of my head, and my body would feel it, and I would walk around as if that argument was continuing to go, except it wasn't. And we didn't talk about it as families. We never sat down and discussed why we got upset, what we got upset over, that it was okay to be upset, and then really how to heal and move forward from that. So those big feelings of feeling angry, of feeling afraid, I learned how to push those inside and keep them hidden until, inevitably, I was pushed to a limit that I couldn't handle or that I couldn't consciously push away, and then I would react, and I would get upset, and I would get angry. And if you saw some of the episodes where me and my mom had some conversations, specifically where she and I were talking about what I went through as a little kid, you could see that exact pattern coming out. The truth is, I want my mom to listen to me like any other kid wants their mom to listen to them. And I want my mom to be able to listen to me without her trauma being dragged into the situation, without her reacting to what I have said, without her getting upset at me for expressing how I feel. And that's what was happening. And now I can look back, and after we've had some of these conversations, and we have sat down with the help of a therapist who was able to listen to both of us while we were talking, almost as a mediator of sorts, my mom was able to start understanding that all I was doing was attempting to tell her what had happened as a child, that I was not attempting to weaponize that or get upset at her for it. And what was happening is I would tell my mom something inevitably about, for example, I have historically said, Mom, you left us with Dad. That hurt, and he abused us. Well, my mom, she would hear that I'm upset at her because she left my dad and left me with him. That's how I viewed it. However, once we broke it down and talked about it, I really actually understood she wasn't leaving me with my dad. She was leaving a relationship that was abusive, that was hurting her and hurting me. And the best thing she could do was to leave the situation in an attempt for all of us to hurt a little less. Her leaving was also a hurt. And at 8 years old, there was no way I could consciously understand why she did that. So I created a resentment internally towards her. It wasn't proper, and it wasn't founded on logic or fact. It was a decision I made as a little boy to be upset at my mom for leaving me with my dad. And until recently, until we had the opportunity to sit down and really, we'll say, unpack all of the levels behind that hurt and that pain, she wasn't able to understand. So when I would tell her that I was upset that she left me with dad, she would react to that because she didn't think that she left me with my dad. She thought that she was leaving an abusive relationship to make things better for us. And guess what? We're both correct. I was hurt, and she left an abusive relationship, and neither of those things was wrong. However, again, growing up with that decision-making process, with those patterns swirling around in the background, inevitably a person gets conditioned to those behaviors. I've come to understand if you have all the parts of your brain and you start to do a little research into how the brain works, roughly 10% of the thoughts that you have every day are under your control consciously, meaning you choose to have those thoughts. Something like 90% of all the thoughts that we have every day are subconscious, meaning they just happen, they are on a loop, and we're not necessarily always aware of those thoughts. However, those thoughts are dictating how we behave. Everything that you have gone through, from being 1 day old to however old you are right now, your nervous system has stored away. It's like your nervous system is like a shelf, and everything that has happened to you is like a little thing that can get put on the shelf, or a big thing that could get put on the shelf. Me losing my brother to suicide, losing my cousin to muscular dystrophy, my family tearing itself apart after all of that. Those are big things on the shelf. Me getting hurt in a relationship, me hurting somebody else in a relationship, not quite as big, but things that are still impactful and weigh heavily on my heart that I can put on the shelf. And so what I've come to learn is it's our job to make sure that our shelf is less dusty every day. You're going to have things that accumulate. You're going to have stuff that you are unaware of until something happens in your life and it makes you aware again of that thing that happened to you that created a little dust on your shelf. And what you can do is, if 90% of our thoughts are subconscious, and think of it this way, when you put your pants on this morning, or you put your shirt on, or you put your clothes on, did you actually think about it, or did you just do it? When you brush your teeth, when you get in your car to drive, when you get in the shower and get a bath, are those things that you are putting a lot of mental effort into, or are they things that you sort of just are in the habit of doing and your body reminds you that it's time to start doing those things, and then you start doing them? My guess is, especially with taking care of your teeth and washing yourself and getting in a vehicle, or if you can't drive yet and you're going to the bus stop to have somebody pick you up, you probably didn't think about doing that. You probably just did it. When you were first learning how to do those things, yes, you were more aware consciously of what you were doing. Once you got better at doing those things, then your body created a habit and pushed that thought from conscious to subconscious, and now that habit runs in the background. This is how people operate. We operate off of conditioning. And it is repetition after repetition after repetition of doing something or not doing something that creates a habit. Once you understand, even if it might be a little painful, that everything that has happened to you in your life, you made a decision about and a choice about, then you can take the power back and start to unwind that decision or that pattern, especially as you get older, and especially as you realize maybe some of the things you did as a kid were simply to allow you to survive. Just like me. I learned to be quiet to survive. I learned to keep my anger in check with myself to survive, so that I didn't get hit, so that I didn't pop up on anybody's radar screen as a threat to them that they would have to turn around and extinguish or yell at me for or get mad at me for or hit me for. So what have you gone through that you can look back in your life and realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize why I was doing this behavior. But if I start to ask myself questions like, why do I do this behavior? Where did it actually originate? And you sit there and sort of, we'll say, meditate upon that thought, and you sit really hard with it, you'll get an answer, and something will crop up. It might not be something that you like. It probably won't be something that you want to hear. However, if you can sit in the discomfort of that thought without pushing it away or without letting the old patterns take over and your old habits take over, this is how you start to unwind and deconstruct these mental self-limiting behaviors that no longer are serving you. That's a big part of it. Is you probably made a lot of decisions about a lot of things when you were younger. And the issue is you haven't upgraded the decision as an adult consciously. So you may still be operating as if you were 6 or 7 or 8 and somebody told you that they don't like you, or maybe they just wanted more effort from you, or they wanted you to do something a little differently than you did, not because what you did was bad, rather because the thing was needed to get a little better, but you took it personally, or it hurt you, or you made an assumption about what they said because you don't understand your patterns. You don't understand how to not take things personally. Because you weren't taught. You see, I wasn't taught how to not take things personally. I wasn't taught how to not assume. I wasn't necessarily taught how to always do my best. And I was taught to lie, not to be truthful with my words. The issue is, I believed at the time the words that I were speaking, even though they were lies, were truthful. So how does one who believes that they are being truthful, even if they are actually not being truthful, either with themselves or with the person that they are talking to, actually become aware of that pattern? I would venture to argue it's when you go through a painful situation, when something happens to you that pushes you beyond your ability to understand. When the worst of the worst traumatic events happen and you are forced to re-examine your life. That's what happened to me. At 8 years old, I had no idea how to objectively look at myself and say, John, why do you have depression? What is going on here? How do you get out of this? I didn't have that ability at 18. I didn't have that ability at 28. And I believe I was most likely only starting to open that ability up at 38. And I'm on my way to 48, and we'll see what happens in the next 6, 7, 8 years to determine whether or not what I'm doing is actually the best, or at the very least is moving me away from things that were destructive to me and to others. So I had depression at 8 years old, or I was told that I had depression at 8 years old. And I can tell you, I remember going to therapy, and I remember the therapist, we would be playing checkers or a game or something. I guess that was the way, was you got a kid doing something. And I've understood, like, a dad and a son might go outside and start shooting hoops. And, in the midst of the physical activity, the son might start talking to the dad, or the dad might be able to ask his son some questions. And they have a conversation through a physical medium or through some sort of other distraction. So for me, when the therapist would have us sit down and play checkers or something like that, I remember being asked questions like, hey, how are things going at home? How is life? What's going on? And I don't necessarily remember the answers that I gave. And I don't remember talking a lot. I just remember playing checkers. And so most likely the therapist was having us play a game, and through playing the game was able to facilitate a conversation to understand where I was mentally. And most likely because I wasn't able to talk or didn't have the ability to really speak on the pain that I was going through, knowing that my mom and my dad were no longer together. And I truly, honestly, 1,000% felt like it was my fault. I really believed that I was a bad kid and that they were splitting up because I was bad. I didn't know anything else. Kids are very self-centered. We believe it is all about us. And then if you get stunted in your thinking, or emotionally you're not able to evolve past those moments, it stands to reason that you will fall back to being 8 years old emotionally when you come up against something that makes you feel the same way as if you did when you were a helpless little child. I can tell you, so here's some of the fucked up things that I used to do as a result of this programming. I stole money from both my parents. I stole items from both of my parents. There was one time where me and one of my cousins were at a grocery store, and I had the genius idea of, hey, let's go and steal some baseball cards while we're at the grocery store. I think they still have baseball cards and all those kind of things. So imagine going to the store and they have a pack of baseball cards, or maybe they're Kardashian cards now, I'm not sure. But you go, and there's a really big high when you open up the cards and you find something or somebody that you really liked or enjoyed. And so my parents, I remember asking for money as a kid to go buy cards, and it was challenging to get money out of my parents because my parents, in my opinion, had a very poor mindset around money. Meaning I would hear things like, we're not Rockefellers, money doesn't grow on trees, you won't get 1 red cent out of me. So I grew up believing that money was hard to come by, that people that had money were evil, and I guess if there were things that I wanted in life, I was going to have to figure out other ways to get them if I didn't have the money. I'm not super certain as to why I thought or believed that it was okay to just start taking things that weren't mine. I just knew that I wanted them, and I didn't understand why I couldn't have them. So I started taking things. I remember when I was like 5 or 6 or 7 years old, it was back in the days when you could still walk to school. I lived a few blocks from my kindergarten school growing up, and I was able to walk there. It was in a different time. It was in the late 80s. And on my way to school, I remember seeing on a porch on my way, somebody had a skateboard outside on the porch. I remember it being so cool looking, and I wanted it. And I knew, or I should say, I knew better than to ask my parents to have something like that. And so on my way home from school, later that day, or maybe it might have been a week or 2 weeks, I don't remember, it was later. But on my way home, I remember running up on the porch, grabbing it, and it was only a few doors down from where I lived. I don't know how anybody didn't see me, but I grabbed that skateboard, I took it home, and I put it in our garage in the back. I never used it. I remember every once in a while going back there to look at it. And now, as I sit and talk about it, I remember having the feeling that if I used this, or that I was seen using this, that it would probably be bad and I would probably get in trouble. And I wasn't able to consciously equate how that lie, how that feeling that I would push away and kind of not acknowledge, that mode of operating became normal. I would come up against a decision. I would feel something internally inside of my body like, you shouldn't do that, this isn't good. And then I would consciously go, but I have to survive, so this is what I'm going to do. And I would move right on past it. And for me, I don't know why I saw stealing as a survival method, but I did. It got so bad to where when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, I would walk into a store and let's say it was like an electronics store and I wanted some music, and I learned stores started to get better at electronically surveilling their merchandise. So I started to learn what things they would not electronically surveil, or how to take a special tag off, or how to get a case open so that I could get the CD out without setting off an alarm. And then I would just stuff it down my pants, stick it inside my coat. I was a heavy kid, so I would wear like hoodies and bigger clothes and things like that. So it looked like I had some extra padding, and underneath all the while I was able to put stuff in there. There were several times where I went to clothing stores and would wear like big baggy clothes on the outside, and I would go into the dressing room and try on a bunch of clothes and then put my clothes back on over the other clothes and walk out with 2 or 3 outfits underneath so that I had a bunch of brand new clothes for school. It just got to the point where asking for money and the things that I thought that I needed but most likely wanted for school, I just started stealing them. I stopped asking for them because for me, in my mind, it was just easier. I wouldn't get in trouble that way, or at least I didn't think I would get in trouble because I didn't have to ask my dad for money, and I thought I had become so good at stealing things that I wouldn't get caught. And the sad part is, I didn't get caught. I got caught once when I was 12 or 13 years old with my cousin and those baseball cards, and you would have thought that would have, put the fear of God or the universe or hell or Satan inside of me. It didn't. It didn't at all. All it did was teach me how to become a better liar to the people that found me out in the first place. And so I just doubled down. And explaining that right now, in the here and the now, exactly allows me to understand why the people in my family who were abusive are pretty much still abusive. And the patterns that me and my mom and my sister are attempting to get out from under, they are still raging rampantly in other members of our family. We've already talked about some situations on this podcast recently where one of my cousins had something to say about me and about my mom publicly because we publicly started talking about these situations. And in truth, he's entitled to his opinion, and in truth, they are entitled to their opinion, and so are we. And so the opinion, it seems, on my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, of the people that aren't me and my mom and my sister, that what we're doing here is hurting people, that it's evil, that we're talking about things that we should not be talking about, and that basically we should just leave it in the past and move on with our lives. And all I have to say to that is, if it were honestly that easy, that's exactly what I would do. That was what I was attempting to do for 25 years, was to run away from everything that had happened in my family and just leave it in the past, to not talk about it, to not deal with it. The issue is, I was never unhappier. I was never going to get anything worthwhile out of life, and I was not ever going to truly live up to, exceed, or go beyond any potential that I might have had in life. And when I really started to question that and ask myself, John, you know that there is so much more that you are capable of doing, and yet you aren't doing it. You continue to act like a scared child who would rather steal and lie and react and get pissed off than learn to face the issues, to grow up, to work on strategies, and ideas that might allow our family to come together and start to heal and move beyond the patterning that was installed in us as kids. That programming or that conditioning is so entrenched in our way of being that we weren't even aware of it. And then it became something that, like, it turned on us when we started to look at it objectively. And we have had members in our family start to turn on each other because it is easier to hide it than it is to bring it out and look at it. It is easier, or seemingly easier, to keep things in the dark than it is to pull things out into the light and to shine light on those dusty, disgusting places that we would rather not look at, and maybe give them a little dusting to understand why it's dusty, and then put it back on the shelf so that inevitably it's something that doesn't continue to gather dust, or at least we know that it gathers dust and that we can dust it off every once in a while if we're not behaving in a way that is conducive to the person we know that we're capable of being but aren't being. There was always this little voice inside of me, even when I was stealing, even when I was lying, where I would believe that I could be better than this, and then would still do the action, still do the bad negative behavior. So it's not logical and it's not rational. And to simply say, from this day forth, I will no longer do the things that I did to get me to this place, or I would no longer operate in the same way that I operated previously up until this day. I am going to change everything from here on out, and nothing will bother me, and I will never react in the same way that I used to. I will always tell the truth. I will never have issues. I will always feel like I can be honest. If you have found that button or a way to access that way of being, could you comment and let me know what you did? I haven't found that yet. What I have found, to be truthful and honest, is to acknowledge all of this pain, to shed light on it, because I kept it in the dark for so long. And when I put light on all these things, I could see all that dust that was gumming up the works. And so I have spent the better part of the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my life going in and dusting off every single thought that comes into my mind. I challenge every single thought. I look at it objectively, and I see if it is something that is still serving me. Now, before I talk about how I got there, it was the bulk of these other behaviors that I had to repeatedly make before I became aware of how to start looking at my thoughts. As a little boy, after being diagnosed with depression at 8 years old, and I was out in the world with that programming to know how to lie to people, to know how to manipulate people to get what I wanted out of them. And in truth, because I was being bullied and being abused verbally and abused physically, I started to become a bully. To one of my cousins, I almost drowned him I must have been 7 or 8 years old. He was probably 3 or 4. And apparently one time, this is something that I was told, that I pushed him underwater and almost drowned him. Same person, a few years later, I threw a baseball at his face, full speed, while he wasn't looking, almost hit him in the face. Can you imagine if I would have connected, what that might have done? And then the same person, years later, apparently I was watching or babysitting or something, and I was 14 or 15 at the time, and I had just discovered my hormones and the opposite sex and pornography. And so I went into another room in the house and I put on a pornography tape that I had found in my house that was there. This person heard me playing this tape, was creeped out by it, and couldn't wait for their parents to come get them. And I would never have found out any of that if I hadn't have put out this podcast in the first place. Because as we have started to talk about the things that other people did to us, other people have commented, like I said earlier, about things that I did to them. And that's a big reason why I'm flying solo today, because I'm not here to talk about other people. And I'm not necessarily here to talk about myself. I am here to use myself as an instrument or a tool for betterment. I am happy to put my own head on a spike, to examine all of my own behaviors, because I actually believe doing that, number one, I'm secretly hoping more people in the world will do something like this. I want to find content where people share the most horrible, challenging things that they have gone through, the things that they have done, and what they have done about it. And I just don't find too much yet. So I'm happy to step up to the plate and take a swing at what I believe that should look like. Because for as long as I can remember, I have felt in the dark, in the shadows, all the while knowing that there was also light in the world. I could see that there were people that were happy, that there were people that didn't have the same problems that I had, that there were people that were able to build a family, to build a business, to have the kind of life that they enjoyed without their pasts crushing them. So that's what I was after. I wanted desperately to find a different way, a different model. For the longest time, I blamed my parents for what I was and for what I was going through. And you can truly only blame your parents for all the bad things that you've gone through if you're willing to blame them for the awesome person that you also are. Nobody is all bad. Nobody is all good. Every single person has the ability to absolutely be a monster. People who grow up in the worst of the worst situations, I talked about this earlier in a podcast. If we went back to the World War II times, during the Nazi concentration camps, there were Nazi soldiers who would take pregnant Jewish women out into fields and shoot them in the back of the head, and then get violently ill after doing it. It's as if they knew what they were doing was wrong and yet still did it anyway, because they were threatened that if they didn't do it, harm would come to those that they loved. Every single organism in this world pushed into a corner of having to fight for their own survival is capable and willing to do whatever it takes, including murder, in order to live. So please do not think that you are not capable of being a monster. You are absolutely capable of being a wonderful monster. The goal, I believe, is to become aware of the fact that you can become a monster and then consciously choose not to be a monster. Which means you have to understand every part of your light and dark. And that is the work. That is what I believe everybody needs to take personal responsibility for. All those thoughts that weigh heavy on your mind, all those things that you don't do anything about, all of those ideas that you have that go nowhere, they're not doing anybody or anything any good stuck in your head. It is not better for you to play small and to die with the best of you stuck inside of you. There is an author, I believe he was also a doctor, Dr. Wayne Dwyer, and he had a quote where he said, "Don't die with your music still inside of you." Do not die with your music still inside of you. You might not be Mozart. You might not be the Beatles. Don't die with your song stuck inside of you. There is a reason you are here. There is a meaning or a purpose for everything in your life. And I believe it is your duty to find out what that may be. And I guarantee that it most likely is not what you think it is. I have come to find that my purpose in life, the reason why I wake up every morning, is to tell the truth, is to speak the unspoken truth, to change the way life is done. I am going to leave this world better than I found it. And I found it as a place where people lie through their teeth in order to survive and die having never actually lived. That is a horrible existence to me. I don't understand the purpose of that. And that is why I'm here talking about these horrible, challenging things, even in the face of my abusers telling me the things that I'm saying here are possibly hurting other people. I have come to realize, and I now have evidence, that that is not true. As I said earlier, I might not have found out that I hurt my cousin had I not put out this podcast. It is quite possible that he could have gotten to the end of his life holding a grudge against me his entire life for the things that I did when I was a little kid. I started out bullying him. And in reality, I don't feel good knowing that I hurt him so much. I don't feel good knowing that he carried all of these things so long. The only redeeming thing here is that had I not said something out loud, outside of my own head, and even beyond my own head here on tape as a way to preserve it, I don't know what good that would have done anybody. I don't know what he could have gotten out of that. And I'm so glad that I got beyond myself, because in truth, it was really hard for me to want to do this podcast in the beginning if I had thought that this was something that would actually hurt people. I can be honest with you now and tell you the truth that when we first started this, some of the things that we were talking about, I had the same thought. Should I be talking about this? Am I going to desecrate anybody's memory? Do I want people talking about me in this way? And when I deconstructed all of those thoughts and started to challenge them, the reward outweighed the risk. I knew that there were going to be people that didn't like what I was saying. I knew that there were going to be people that were going to attempt to tear it down. What I didn't realize was who those people would actually be, and some of the closest ones still to me that really most likely are still stuck in the same type of patterning and don't know how to get beyond it. And me talking about it threatens their ability to stay in that place. So I understand that, because I'm taking their darkness and I'm shining light on it, and I'm essentially asking them to dust off what's in their shadows simply by speaking about what's in mine. I get it. I don't like when people say truthful things, but I hate when people lie. Hearing the truth hurts. It doesn't feel good when somebody tells you you're the reason you aren't getting what you want out of life. It's hard to hear that. I've had several people in my life not tell me the truth. And so I was operating under the assumption that everything that I was doing was good because I was surviving. I was alive. That was the model that I was shown. Then I started getting out into the real world. I got beyond my initial environment, and I started to go to school, and I started to have work, and I started to have social avenues where I started to see that how I operated and how other people operated were not the same. And that really messed with me for a long, long time. And I doubled down again on hiding in plain sight because I thought that was the best way. Our bodies and our brains are designed to keep us safe. Sharing who you are, showing the world who you are, actually saying to somebody, if they ask you, hey, are you okay? And you say, I am not okay, that makes you vulnerable. Our bodies detest vulnerability. Our brain detests vulnerability. It wants to keep us safe. So when we expose ourselves willingly, sometimes the things you say are not truthful because your brain will put a different thought in place. And you will say something that is not true, that your body is showing is true. If I asked you, hey, are you okay? And you give me one of these, yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. You see how I got smaller, I shut down. My voice displays no confidence. I'm not sure of what I'm saying. Those are the giveaways. You can't hide the tone in your voice. That is always a dead giveaway on your emotional state. It is very challenging. Ask any actor. If the actor is not feeling good inside of their body, and yet they have to act like they are feeling good inside of their body, they have to change their tone of voice in order to make you believe that they are feeling good. An interesting visual to that, the guy who played Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, was literally going through chemotherapy and had cancer while he was filming that movie. He didn't tell anybody about it. He was literally hiding in plain sight. And yet the man was able to portray one of the greatest superhero stories of our time. That movie is indispensable. His performance in that movie is historic. And then to understand that roughly a year and a half later, the man died from cancer, and you look back and you can see the performance he gave while his body internally was literally being ravaged and eaten apart by the most savage disease known to man. Maybe that helps you understand an inkling of how hard it is to actually hide who you are and what you're going through. And that's why I started off today's podcast by saying, I know that you are not okay. You cannot hide it from me because I have spent the bulk of my life being not okay. I know what that sounds like. I know what that looks like. I know what that feels like. And I see you being it. You can't hide it from me. That doesn't make me special. It doesn't mean I'm better than you. It means, if anything, I was simply forced to become more attuned to my own emotional states sooner. That is actually the gift that has come out of this struggle, is my ability to be self-aware with myself. To understand that the struggle that I was given as a kid made me as empathetic and understanding and objective as I am as an adult. Not bad things. However, again, those patterns, before I became aware of them, or my ability to deconstruct them, were so overwhelming that my ability to control them or feel them was non-existent. And so, like I said, in my house, people were either yelling and screaming and loud and verbose, or they were silent and quiet. There was no in between. For me, the thing that helped me understand that there was something in between being super loud and angry and aggressive all the time, or being a fucking mute and not saying anything, was becoming addicted to drugs, using external substances to create a better internal environment. My first foray was using marijuana. At my first time using marijuana was 16 or 17, and I did it a couple times, but I wasn't super into it until I got into college. And then in college, it was seemingly more available. And then also in college, I was more isolated, away from my family more, left alone with my own thoughts. And at 18, 19 years old, coming out of the environment that I had come out of, without any real model for how to handle things differently, I was looking for some kind of support, something that allowed me to think clear-headed and actually be productive and move forward if I was feeling overwhelmed or scared. And you would think, like, marijuana, how does that actually help somebody be clear-headed? Like, I have heard personally, like, all the stories, like, dope heads and you're cloudy and marijuana restricts the blood flow to your brain and you become stupider when you use marijuana and, you know, you just sit on the couch and act like a dumbass and eat Cheetos all day and, you know, those kind of things. That wasn't true for me. When I used marijuana, especially at 18, 19, 20 years old, in those early years, I was able to go from being so angry and that was uncontrollable to when I was using marijuana, I was able to go to work and be productive. I was able to get my schoolwork done. I was able to, I can say, be more present with my family, even though maybe, I was high or psychoactively altered in my brain. And without getting too much into the what happens chemically inside your brain when you use marijuana, it was touching receptors inside my brain that essentially allowed me to relax. And when I was able to relax and the brain receptors were able to get touched in a way that they hadn't before, it gave a brief window of a new avenue, a new possibility. And I liked that. The issue became, I thought that in order to have that state of mind all the time, I had to be high all the time or use a substance all the time. That isn't necessarily true in a global, big picture sense. What I have come to understand after doing my homework and research, and really one of the big books that allowed me to understand, or at least have a few avenues of what I was doing unwittingly, was The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. In The Body Keeps the Score, I learned what I was doing was self-medicating myself with marijuana. And then in my state of being medicated, I was able to get beyond the trauma that my body felt. For example, the things that happened to me as a kid, when I would think about them at 17 or 18 years old, my body would shut down my ability to work and to think properly. I would use marijuana. That would short circuit my anxiety and tamp it down to where I could be productive. And that gave me an ability to move forward. That became a problem, however, as I started to get older, and I couldn't access that state of mind without using marijuana, or as I started to get even further in down the road, I started to attempt to use cocaine, so a stimulant. I started to attempt to use Oxycontin or oxycodone, which is a synthetic derivative of heroin, so downers and uppers. I was still attempting to tamp down feelings with my drug use because I wasn't getting beyond the patterning. All I was doing was getting better at using medication to live with that patterning. So the more drug use that I stacked on top of my initial self-medication became more evidence to my body and brain that I just needed to be even more medicated in order to thrive, or what I thought was thrive in this world, in order to work, in order to get beyond feeling like I had to survive in this moment. I had to do more drugs, take more things, be further spaced out or further disconnected or disassociated from what I was actually feeling inside my brain and inside my nervous system. The other avenues in The Body Keeps the Score that I learned were to top down verbally talk about things and work through things linguistically, or bottom up to start to attack things by moving my body more, to process the trauma by moving my physical self. And that is where I personally started naturally, is when I lost my brother and my cousin. It was then where I made a decision, because at that time, that was at the height of my drug use and or me telling myself that using drugs was the only way that I could actually thrive in this world. And when they died, there was no amount of drugs that can take away the horrible feeling that I felt, which meant drugs could no longer put me in a place where I could operate clearly. What had once served me was ripped out from underneath of me. And I remember when my brother passed away, the last time I ever used cocaine was probably 2 or 3 weeks after he passed away. I was still in a place then where I was attempting to numb everything out. I couldn't believe what had happened. I was most likely still in shock. And I bought a bag of cocaine and I took a few lines of it, and it was horrible. If any of you have ever done cocaine, real cocaine, when it's a little yellowy, when the light hits it just right and it shines like a disco ball, where it's so good, and if you drop some on the floor, you'll get down on the floor and lick it off the floor. That was not this cocaine. This bag of cocaine that I got after my brother had passed away It was cut with something, baby powder or laxative or some kind of horrible shit. And I took up 1 or 2 lines, and it not only did it not get me high, it cut my nose, it made me feel like shit, it clogged me up. And I remember saying to myself, I can't do this. I'm going to die if I continue to go down this road of just attempting to numb everything that I feel. So I stopped around 25 years old, maybe 26 at that time. We'll say cold turkey. I stopped cocaine and pills and most forms of substances. Marijuana was still the one where when I would use it appropriately, I still felt the best inside of my body. I had been on an antidepressant before my brother died for about 4 or 5 years. I had an incident in college where, to put a long story short, I took a medical leave from school and I said that I was depressed. And I was. I had lost 40 pounds in probably 2 or 3 months. And I could no longer operate effectively with all of the lies that I was telling myself, all of the conditioning that was on top of those lies, and then all of the drugs that I was taking on top of that. In college, I had stolen money from some people I went to college with. They had found out that I had taken the money. And when they found out that I had taken the money, it became apparent to me that they wanted to do physical harm to me. Even though I had paid all the money back, I made steps to make sure I had righted my wrong. I made a decision to leave school. And I called both of my parents. And it was the one time in my life where both of my parents, no questions asked, came to help me. The issue was, I had lied to them about why they were helping me. I said I could no longer handle the weight of what was going on in school, that it was getting me down emotionally, it was tearing me apart, and I needed to leave school immediately. What I didn't tell them was that I had stolen money from some people that I lived with, and that they wanted to hurt me, and that I was running away from it. And so that's what I did. I ran away from it. And around 20 years old, 21 years old, after leaving college, I came home and my parents were able to get me into a therapist. And that therapist agreed with my initial diagnosis that I had depression. And so at 20 and a half, 21 years old, I went on an antidepressant, Effexor. And that was my first foray into government-issued pharmaceuticals. Even though I had been self-medicating before that for years, I decided to allow the system to dictate what I should take because I didn't know how to take care of myself. I allowed a therapist to say that I needed an antidepressant. I was exhibiting signs of depression because I was not being honest with myself and everybody around me. And so from the ages of about 22 to 25, when my brother passed away, I was on an antidepressant. I used marijuana religiously. I used cocaine. I used downers like Oxycontin and oxycodone. I even smoked marijuana that had been dipped in embalming fluid. It was called wet. Anything that I could to create a different feeling and a different chemical reaction inside of my body was pretty much all I was chasing. That was my truth. When I felt nothing was when I felt the best. And then my brother took his own life. And all of that went away. So now, at 25 years old, losing my brother, and then at 26, losing my cousin, it was at that time, within that year, my brother died on October 8th, 2007. My cousin died on October 30th, 2008. It was 1 year and 22 days. In that 1 year and 22 days, that was when I had the realization and made the decision to get off of antidepressants. And I used the help of a psychiatrist and a psychologist to do that. I didn't do that on my own, and I do not recommend anybody ever mess around with their own chemistry on their own. As I sit here and talk about how I messed with my own chemistry on my own, I also made a conscious decision that I knew how to get out of pain now. Because my brother had taken his own life and died by suicide, I knew that that was an option for me. And my brain, anytime that I'm in pain, even now, my brain will slip in the thought, hey, it can all be over. And now, consciously, I have to challenge that thought and tell my brain, no, I still want to live. I don't want to be out of pain. I don't want it all to end. Because my brain and my body will do whatever it needs to do to keep me safe, including tell me thoughts that are not true. And so that's also why I believe that speaking your truth, speaking the unspoken truth, those things that you know deep down inside to be true, that you have not said to yourself, to anyone yet, that is how we start to get out of where we are. When my brother died and my cousin died, and I was no longer able to fall back on taking drugs to feel better in order to move forward, I had to completely rebuild everything, my entire way of being. That's why I decided to get off of all drugs. That's why I had the help of a psychiatrist and a psychologist to step down off of the antidepressants, because I told myself, I will feel everything that I have to feel in order to move through this. There's not anything now that I will not face, because the truth is, my brother gave me an out. I can take my own life if I'm tired of the pain. What I also realized was I wasn't ready to make that decision. And what has really been burning in my subconscious is, what would my brother have needed to not make that decision? That is the impetus for everything that I do now with my life. I do not believe my brother had to take his own life. I do not believe that was necessary. Thank you for making it this far in our show. If you're feeling overwhelmed, that's okay. Just know that you're not alone, that we're here with you, and we're going to work through this together. If you need some help or assistance, dial 988 or head over to our website, www.iamnotok.com, www.iamnotok.com, for a space where you can breathe. And if you want to send us an email and let us know how you're doing, we can get back to you as soon as we can and make sure that you're on the right path. Now, back to the show. However, if I believed that he could still be alive, what did he need in order to stay alive? And then what would he have needed in order to thrive in this life? That is everything that I am doing. That is why I started my gym. I told you after I lost him that I needed to start physically processing everything that had happened to me. As we talked about in The Body Keeps the Score, you can talk about things top down, you can work through things bottom up, or you can go through the middle and you can medicate, which might open up a door to allow you to talk about things without re-traumatizing yourself. For me, it was easier to start just physically working through stuff. I wasn't ready to talk about anything, and I needed to stop medicating myself because that wasn't taking me away from feeling like fucking shit. So the only thing that made sense to do differently was to start working out again. When I was working out, when I was in high school, that was when I felt the strongest and best in my life. When I lost my brother, my first conscious thoughts that I remember having were, when did I feel the best in my life? And I felt the best and the strongest and the most connected when I was a part of a football team and I was going to school every day, and really after school, being a part of a team where I was able to express myself physically. So that's what I started doing after I lost Tony, was I started lifting like I did when I was in high school. The issue became my body was so beat the fuck up from football that I was not able to lift that way. And I couldn't concentrate or focus on my workouts and just get energy out in the way that I wanted to, but I still needed something to focus on. And so I shifted my focus from doing workouts to my nutrition because I wanted to start looking better. That was really the impetus, was, okay, I used to be overweight and heavy. My workouts, I can't work out as hard as I want to. So I'm going to start learning about nutrition because this is another part of the phase that will allow me to have some control. Here's the fascinating part. Listen up. After I started focusing on my nutrition, maybe within about 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, one day at the gym, I was in the gym, and I was playing basketball in the morning with some of the guys. It was like 2 or 3 days a week. I would lift in the morning with some guys, and then 1 or 2 days a week we would play basketball. It was like lifting days and cardio days. And this was early morning, like 4 and 5 a.m. before I would go to work at 8 a.m. And one day I specifically remember one of the guys I played basketball with, he came right up to me, he looked me right in my eye, and he said, what the hell have you been doing recently? And I turned around, I looked at him because I was like upset. And he's like, you're not as angry. You're not so much of a dick. And I noticed that you've lost some weight and you seem to be feeling better. What's going on? The issue was I was not aware of any of those changes until he said something to me. Literally, hey man, you're not so much of a dick. You're not so angry. What have you changed? Really, the only thing that I had changed was my nutrition, was my diet. So then I asked myself, well, if he notices a change inside of me, and all I have been doing has been working on my diet, is it possible that my diet has something to do with my behavior and how I feel inside of my body? I didn't know that my diet dictated a big part of how I felt. I didn't know that the food that I was eating or not eating could make me feel better or reduce inflammation in my body or increase inflammation in my body, which would then dictate how the chemicals in my gut would work, which would then dictate how the chemicals in my brain would respond to how my gut chemicals were working, to which would then influence the thoughts that I would have based on the chemical composition of what was happening inside of my body. So it seemed simple. Change my nutrition, my behavior changed. What I came to realize was I was literally changing myself chemically, on a chemical level. I was feeling better by eating better foods and behaving better as a result of feeling better. What the hell was going on inside of me? That fascinated me. And it also let me know and showed me that there was a different way than the model that I had been given or shown or had adopted. Because in truth, all the actions that we take, we choose to make them. You might not have chosen it consciously. You might have chosen it subconsciously for whatever reason because it served you. And maybe now, here, listening to this, you'll start to realize you know whatever you're doing isn't actually making you feel better, but you keep doing it anyway. Well, here's your opportunity for pattern interruptus to give yourself stop, step back, and objectively look at that thought that is coming into your brain. Are you actually an asshole? Or are you acting like an asshole? Are you traumatized? Or are you acting traumatized? Are you actually immature? Or are you acting immaturely? Do you really suck at life? Or did life suck at giving you what you needed? Are you really the crazy one? Or is everybody else really crazy and telling you you're crazy because you're questioning what you know is no longer serving you? How do you know what you're saying and what you're doing are going to lead you to where you want to go? Most likely you don't. Probably why you're still here listening to me this deep into this podcast. Do you understand now why I'm talking so much about everything that I really don't know a ton about? Because I'm attempting to find the same connections or enhance the connections that I have made. There are only, as so much as I have found at the recording of this podcast, 3 ways to start tackling your programming. Start talking about it, start physically working through it, or find a way to use medicine to open up a door to allow you to access and talk about thoughts and incidences in your life without them re-traumatizing you. That is what it's going to take. It is going to take you shining light on all your dust bunnies on your motherfucking shelf. So let's start dusting some of these bitches off. I told you about some of the things that I did to my one cousin when I was younger. I told you about stealing from my parents. I told you about the depression that I was diagnosed with at 8 years old. How many kids do you know in the world now that are diagnosed or undiagnosed with something? Probably you know more kids than not that have a diagnosis, and most of those kids, if not all of those kids, actually believe they are their diagnosis. They believe that they are depressed. They believed that they are anxious. They believe they have something wrong with them. And nothing is further from the truth. You are not defined by your diagnosis. You can choose to let it define you or to let it strengthen you. Just because somebody has said you are these things, you have to choose to also be those things. What I started to realize after coming out of my haze of being on antidepressants and all the drugs that I was taking was that I was not operating from a place of where my heart and my head and mind were actually connected. All they were doing was attempting to keep me alive. And they did a really damn good job of keeping me alive. So before you go any further, are the behaviors that you exhibit that you don't like about yourself anymore, are they keeping you alive? How are they keeping you alive? Who are they keeping you alive from? The thoughts that you have in your head that you know you could be doing more or could be doing better. How is that keeping you safe? How is that keeping you alive? What is it keeping you safe from? What would you need in order to feel safer or to feel as if you could unpack, to talk about, to let go of, to dust off these issues? For me, it was finding a space where I didn't have to medicate myself. So going to therapy and using the help of a therapist and a psychologist and a psychiatrist to get off of medication while simultaneously working out physically and changing the chemical composition of my body through movement and through nutrition, putting food inside of my body. So as I stepped down off of one, I increased the other. And for the better part of 10 to 12 years, I dove headfirst into everything a person could do to better themselves physically. Everything from understanding nutrition to understanding energy balances in the body, to understanding what exercise does to the body, to understanding how to help somebody strengthen their body and improve through exercise. And what that led me to was the fact that I was still running away from things that I didn't know how to talk about. So for a long time, it looked like I was doing really good. I changed the whole trajectory in my life. I went from being addicted to drugs and on a shit ton of them to I had a job for 3 years, which was the longest that I had a job for. And while I was working at that job, I would get up in the morning and I would work out. I would go to my job and then I would come home at night and I would research how to get better inside of my body. And the cool thing was that same guy who came up to me and told me that I wasn't a dick any longer or I seemed less angry also asked me what I was doing and if I could assist him because he noticed a huge difference and he wanted to get better. He wanted to move better on the basketball court and feel stronger and all the things that he saw me doing. So it was a good thing. It was something that took me away from the doldrums of thinking I was a horrible, fucked up person to seeing that this new avenue that was helping me change might actually be something that could assist others. So I doubled down on that. And I did everything that I could to get better physically. And I did a really good job of that. I went to a therapist for, especially in the beginning, sometimes I would go twice a week, and there was over 2 years where it was like that. A lot of times, so after I found myself in therapy and I was in the gym for a while, and that guy, he noticed that I wasn't so much of a dick. Man, that right there opened up another window, and I was able to see something different. And through that window and going down, learning about nutrition and being physical, that took me a big chunk of the way down the road. I needed to rebuild myself physically. And what happened was, after about 6, 7, 8 years of doing that, I found myself in a relationship, an intimate relationship, and I had a series of 2 or 3 relationships within a short period of time that ended pretty badly. I had hurt some people that I was with. They had hurt me. And even though I was consciously working on my body and being conscious of what I put inside of my body, I was still not aware of what my body had remembered about lying and being angry and how to handle myself inside of relationships growing up. You see, the intimate relationships I had growing up with my parents, my aunts and uncles and grandparents, they were already tainted. I was already essentially operating from a place of knowing that it was not okay to feel big feelings. And so inside of my relationships in my mid to late 30s, I would get intimate with women. I would move further down the intimacy road and subconsciously come up against some pattern or something that scared me, and I would have a behavior that was detrimental to my relationship because what I was saying I wanted was not what I was doing. And so it was appearing that as if I was lying to my partners. And that hurt my partners. And it created distrust between me and my partners. And because I didn't know how to objectively look at my own behaviors through the relationship lens, I thought it was them, it was their fault, they're the reason this relationship is bad, and I would either push them away or I would exhibit behaviors that were so negative where then they would push me away. And instead of maturing and growing together in my relationships, I would do something to harm my partner that was irreconcilable. And I did that several times. And that's when I started to become aware that even though I was physically working on things from a bottoms-up approach, and that I had learned that I had used a medical intervention in the middle to allow me to open a new door to go down the approach physically, there was still a shit ton of things that I had not addressed verbally, that I had not talked about, that I had not dusted off and shed light on. And that was right around the time, right before my gym here, about 3 or 4 years ago, was hit by a tornado. A tornado went through this area. And I shouldn't say the tornado did not actually hit the building. It went by the building. But the destruction that it pulled through as it went by flooded my building. This wall behind me, right here, is probably 18 to 24 inches. There was at least that much water in this building. So everything in here was under almost 2 feet of water. Everything got pushed around. Everything got messed up. My entire business was flattened again. And this was after COVID. So 3 years ago, I reached a breaking point mentally where I was like, the universe literally just showed me that I should not be working in my gym anymore. It just crushed my gym. I'm going to close the gym down. And it was right around that time where I had this thought. I went out for a walk one day, so I was being physical. And I believe I may have used a microdose, or it was the day after I had used the microdose of psilocybin or magic mushrooms, and I was taking a walk, and I had this thought, John, you are not okay. John, you are not okay. And the thought wouldn't go away. It wouldn't go away. It wouldn't go away. And I challenged it for 2 or 3 days. I did my best to push it away. It wouldn't go away. And so 3 or 4 days after the tornado hit my building here, because what had happened was I came in here, I saw what had happened, I shut the door and I walked away. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I almost threw up after that first day when I came in here, and I knew whatever had happened and the way things were going, I could not do it any longer. So I wrote an email to everybody, all the members of my gym, and I let them know that I was seriously considering shutting down the gym and moving on to what I thought I wanted to do next. I've said it on this podcast, I'm very into music, and I sincerely believe what I have gone through and what I have learned is the stuff of great music. And that's how I wanted to express what I've gone through. The issue was when I told all my clients that I no longer wanted to keep the gym open, there was a huge pushback. And they immediately told me, John, we need this place. We need it. We need you. So I made a deal with them. And I said, I'm not going to clean it up. I can't do it. It knocked me out. I need help, guys. And all the members of the gym that were able came and started the cleanup process. And it helped me understand that other people, needed to physically start working on things the way that I had for years and years and years. It helped me have the thought that the reason that I started this business in the first place, even though I've said I didn't start this business because I wanted to, I can confidently say I started this business because I needed to. I needed to rebuild myself. And other people needed to rebuild themselves. So my business became a place for people to come in the bottom-up route and start to physically process all of the things that they have gone through in an attempt to become strong enough to be vulnerable. Like we talked about earlier, that vulnerability of saying what is true and actually doing what you know will help you get where you need to go makes you vulnerable. It exposes you. It moves beyond the safety threshold of your body attempting to keep you safe. And then, because I'm not a therapist and I'm not somebody who is medically licensed, I cannot sit here and tell you I believe you should take medicine. In fact, in some cases, I would tell you I believe you should not. However, what I learned for myself was medication opened a door for me that allowed me to walk on a different path and to see my story and to see myself in a different way. And so this podcast might be like some kind of medicine for you. Hearing somebody say something different than what you know to you think be true. And maybe hearing these things will get you in front of the kind of person who can assist you in your medical needs. And that leads to here on the podcast. I'm not doing anything physical on this. Literally, this is me sitting down and talking. And I can sit here and say this pretty confidently. I hate just talking. I hate people who just talk. I don't like it one bit. And I know that you know people who just talk. I don't like it. So when my mom initially came to me with an idea for a podcast, I didn't want to just sit down and talk shit about other people. I didn't want to just talk about what had happened to us for no reason. I didn't want to talk just to talk. I wanted this to also have a purpose. And the initial purpose was for me and my mom and my sister to we'll say, have a sentient being in the room. Something capturing what we're saying without emotion. And us being able to go back and look at that objectively has allowed us all to grow independently and interdependently. I can see how my mom reacts. I can see how my sister reacts. I can see how I react. And so this podcast, even though we have recently had pushback, and there's people that think that it's not good to talk about these things, the messages that I personally have gotten in private say that is not true. There are people in the world who need to know how to move beyond what happened to them. There are people who are searching, just like me, for a better way. How can I talk about what I have gone through? How can I deal with the pain, the trauma, the most challenging times in life, and still live a life that at times can have joy? How can I be around family members and be present? How can I go to work and not let the weight of everything that I've gone through crush me? I know you are asking yourself those questions. Well, I believe this is your bridge. This podcast is shedding light on all my darkness, on any darkness I believe a human could go through, and showing you how to cross the bridge over into the light. You are going to have to acknowledge what you have gone through. You are going to have to face the truth of what actually happened. You are going to have to sit down and feel uncomfortable knowing that some of the decisions you made have led you to where you are now in life. You are going to have conversations with yourself, with others in your life that are not fun, that do not feel good, and yet are desperately needed to move you beyond that trauma. There were 3 incidences that I've had as an adult that I would like to unpack here as I finish up in an attempt to speak my truth, to shine light on these things that still cause me a little dust. I had an incident here at the gym where I was part of a local networking group, and we were supposed to have an event here at my gym. The event was supposed to be on October 8th, 2022, which was 15 years to the date after losing my brother. It was going to be the day where I revealed that I am not okay. The networking group that I was a member of had come to me and asked me to put on this event. They wanted to put a spotlight on my business. And I said yes. And I said that that was the day that I had wanted the event to happen. And what happened when the day of the event came around was I didn't have the response that I had hoped for. either from the members of my networking group, from the members of my community here in my gym, and the members locally out in the community that I had started to let know about this event that I wanted to have here at my gym. And what had happened was the main member that was a part of my networking group was also the president of the networking group and was also a member at my gym. And the day that I was supposed to have that networking event on October 8th, 2022, the person who was the president of the networking group came to my class and came to my gym to have class with me. And the event was supposed to be about a half an hour to an hour after class. So after class was done, I was going to set up the event and then have community members in my event after our class. And this person didn't stay for the event. This person left. This was a person who told me personally that they were a friend of mine. And this was a person who publicly told people that my business was worth occupying because they themselves had occupied my business. And then on the day where I had built it up in my head and I had assumed that it was important, as important for the members of the community to be here as it was for me to share what I was going through and what I wanted to unveil. And when those people didn't show up to my event, I got really, really angry. Really angry. And I yelled at that person. And instead of, if I had it to do all over again, and I would have been able to challenge my own thoughts and not react to my own thoughts, I would have not taken it personally, meaning this person told me they were not coming to my event, even though they came to my gym that day. And instead of getting to the point where I yelled at this person when they confronted me about the situation later, because they sensed that I was upset, but I didn't say that I was upset, those patterns welled up inside of me and those feelings got so big that I was not able to access my clear thinking. And I reacted and I lashed out and I yelled that I was upset that this person didn't care enough about me to be at my event. I took that personally. And I was of the mind that if you're my friend, when I needed a friend the most, you weren't there for me. If I had it to do again, I would tell that person, I understand that you don't want to deal with these kinds of things in your life. However, I need to be surrounded by people who are ready to deal with these things in their life. And I don't know that I would have had to break up with that person or end our friendship. Most likely, it would have naturally fizzled, I believe. Because here's what I have found. I am searching for and really want to surround myself with people who are ready to admit and deal with and be okay with not being okay. When I have challenging conversations with clients, when I have challenging conversations with myself, when I sit here in this not good feeling fire, I want others to do that with me as well. And because I had a negative reaction the last time somebody walked away from me while I was sitting in the fire, now I know how to speak to somebody. Really, now I know how to speak to all individuals by basically saying and showing you and speaking my truth that this is who I am. I am the kind of person who will not allow dust to build up on my shelves. And if you're the kind of person who will allow dust to be built up on your shelf, you're going to feel like I'm the kind of person that's too clean or overbearing, and you will move away from me. And that's okay. And that does not upset me. And you're allowed to do whatever you want to do. My hope is eventually, maybe something in one of these podcasts brings you back into that light and allows you to look at the things that I'm saying objectively, without pain, to look at all your dust and maybe start to deconstruct what happened better. Because I would have done things very differently. I would have let that person know that I believe that this is not a... I believe we are heading in different directions, and should life bring us back together, we'll reconvene then, and allowed us each to go our own separate ways without it having to hurt us, even though it might have stung in the moment. Because I've learned if you can't let go of something, you can't make room for something new. And because I couldn't let go of that anger, it blew up in my face and took a chunk out of me. And that looked and felt like it had created space. That's not the way that you want to create space. A similar situation, I had a member here at my gym who I had worked with for 2.5, almost 3 years. She had a lot of physical results in the gym, lost over 90 pounds, did really, really well that way. And yet there were still things that she wanted to get better at physically. She could sense that she wasn't losing all the weight that she had wanted. So we started talking about what might else be in the way of her getting results. And we started to have some of these tough conversations about what she had gone through as a kid, what her upbringing was like, and we got into some sticky areas. And then those conversations stopped. And that person told me they didn't want to have any of those conversations with me anymore, that we had gone as far as they felt like we could, that they just wanted to work on the physical stuff with me. And so we started doing that again. And one day, maybe a week or two later, after we had stopped having conversations, they were in working on things physically, and they told me they were going to have a new addition to their family, and they were going to adopt a new pet. And I thought that was funny and good and cute. However, what I said was, "Oh wow, you're a sucker, huh?" And this person took that personally. And within a few days of me saying that, I got a letter, an email, telling me that this person couldn't come back to the gym anymore. They didn't feel good coming back to the gym. And I took that personally. This was somebody I had spent a lot of time with, whether we were here working on things physically, whether we were back talking things personally. And the fact that they couldn't come in and tell me to my face that they no longer wanted to work with me, that hurt. And I allowed it to hurt. And I wrote back a very matter-of-fact message, like, thanks so much for letting me know. I wish you the best. When in reality, if I had that to do over, I would have said, I apologize. That wasn't okay for me to say. And if there was anything else that I had done that made you feel uncomfortable or that you could not express yourself to me, that I would want to have cleared that up instead of allowing this person to leave my space when they had actually got a lot of good out of being here, just like I had when I started. And the final event, I had a friend at the time who came here one day to meet me for lunch. And about a week before we were supposed to meet for lunch, he had sent me a text message with a screenshot in it. And that screenshot was a screenshot of a podcast. And the podcast was talking about psychedelic therapy for veterans that had had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, something I have also been diagnosed with in my adult life after losing my brother. And my friend at the time showed up here to the gym. We were going to sit down to have lunch, and I asked my friend, and I said, hey, did you listen to that podcast? What did you think about it? And he turned to me and he said, I didn't listen to it. And I took that personally. I was upset. Why would you send that to me if you didn't even listen to it? I don't understand why wouldn't you review the information that you thought I should hear? And he said he didn't believe in psychedelic therapy, to which I got really upset again, because he told me, or the way that he expressed himself was telling me things that he believed that psychedelic therapy was harmful and that people were taking psychedelics and jumping off of roofs and cliffs and harming themselves, and that the government had made it illegal for a reason, and that there was nothing positive about it, and that there wasn't anything that he wanted to talk about with it. To which I got upset and angry because what he was saying I didn't believe to be true. The issue was I started yelling at him. Or I raised my voice and I said, man, what the hell? How could you not believe that psychedelic therapy is good? Haven't you seen the new research that's coming out? This stuff that you're talking about happened in the 1950s. It's bullshit. But can you see how the change in tone in my demeanor, even right there, that was off-putting to him? And he felt like I was coming at him. And he even said, man, stop yelling at me. And I said, bro, I'm not yelling at you. I think what you're saying is bullshit. And it upset him, and it put him on his heels, and he got up, and he said, I don't want to talk about this, I'm going to leave. And as he turned around to leave, he said, I'll talk to you later. And all I said was, nah, man, don't bother. He walked out, he left, and I haven't heard from him since, nor should I have. I was completely wrong in that situation. I should not have raised my voice. While it doesn't necessarily matter, I realized pretty quickly after I had got upset with him that I was wrong, and I sent a message to him to that effect, and I told him, I do apologize for raising my voice. That was not correct. That was not good. That was not right. And I do wish you all the best. In life. And if that person is watching this or would ever watch this, that's all I would ever want for anybody that I have ever come in contact with, especially anybody that I have come in contact with that I have hurt, or my hurt has leaked out and hurt them. I would want to sincerely apologize. If me, John Bear, was ever an asshole to you, I do hope you can understand that I wasn't at my best. And I do wish that I could do it better. I wish I could take back the hurt I caused you. I really wish that I didn't have to sit here and say these things in this way because they happened. I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry that I hurt you. And while I can't take back what I did, what I do moving forward will be better. I am the same person I was growing up. I just have installed a new program. And if you ever get to the point where if you're listening to this and I've done something to hurt you, and you want to hurt me back, do it. Go ahead. I would rather know that I hurt you and feel that pain than have you stay silent and live the rest of your life upset, mad, or hurt by me. Please. That's why I'm shedding light on everything possible and talking about what happened to me, what I can do about it, and how I can get better from it moving forward. And everything I've said here today is 1,000% my truth. And if you don't want to talk to me, and you can't forgive me, are you able to let it go so that it doesn't hurt you anymore, truly? I don't want you to hate me unless your hate is what keeps you alive. And I've learned that some people, hate is better than depression too, right? Depression really low. Hate, anger, frustration, all a little better. So you can tell me you hate me. You can tell me why you hate me. You can tell me how you hate me. Just don't let that hate turn into hate for yourself or others. Because then you become just like me, and just like I was. And this world needs no more people who are unaware of who they are. I wish you the very best in life, even if you don't wish that for me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making it this far. If you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what would you ask them? What would you tell them? Is there somebody in your life that you know you need to apologize to? Is there somebody in your life that you need an apology from? Is there somebody that you can talk to get beyond yourself? Another final point: find struggle in life. Nothing good ever came to me from comfort. Not one thing. Everything in life that has made me struggle, that I didn't understand, that I had to put effort in to get beyond, is what has made me the person that I am today. Stop seeking comfort. Look for all situations that make you uncomfortable, and learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. I believe if you do that, as Bruce Lee would say, then you'll live a life worth remembering. I would also say it's important to know yourself. It's important to know your body. It's important to know your purpose. How you respond, how you react, how you show up in the world, your presence, that's you, yourself. And if you're not aware of how you show up, or if you're not aware of what you and yourself need, that's part of the work you have to finish. If you don't know your body most likely is in pain, and it has been telling you that you are in pain. It has been keeping score. Maybe it's a joint pain. Maybe it's keeping you in a painful relationship because your body keeps the score. And when you start working on your body, it will help you remember what the score is and what you need to do to even it. And you need to know your purpose, your North Star, what guides every decision that you make. That is your reason for existing, your reason for being. Every morning when you wake up, what are you supposed to accomplish today that you tomorrow would thank you for? What can you do today that you'll thank yourself for tomorrow? If you put those things in order and you focus your attention on yourself, on your body, on your purpose, nothing will get in your way and nothing can hold you back. If I could sit here and look at myself objectively, which I'm going to attempt to do as I finish up today, I would ask myself, John, what is weighing heavily on your heart that you feel you need to get off of your heart? What would feel good to unload? It would feel good to unload the fact that the reactions that I have displayed over the years, my reactivity as in being angry and being upset as more of my default mode of being, I don't like that. And I would challenge myself consciously and say, well, why were you so angry? Where did that come from? I was consistently afraid for my life. I didn't know I was afraid for my life. But I was. I was angry at being told who I was and who I wasn't. I was angry that I didn't know how to not be angry. I was angry that I didn't know how to operate differently. And I believe I adopted anger as my mode of operating because it kept me alive. As I've come to understand, feeling depression or being depressed is about the lowest emotion a person can feel. Feeling angry is one or two steps above feeling depressed. It feels better to feel angry than it does to feel depressed. And having been diagnosed with severe depression at 8 years old, that's who I thought I was. Because that's what I was told. I was most likely angry that I was told that I was depressed when I was a little kid. I was angry because I knew the behaviors that I was exhibiting they didn't feel good to me. And yet I still did them anyway. If I sit and ask myself, what could I have done differently when I was a kid? Or what allowed me to get through my childhood? Like, what allowed me to go to school and play football and make it look like everything was okay? I learned how to lie. I white-knuckled it. And the majority of my day was telling you what I thought you wanted to hear while hiding what I actually was. And as long as I thought you heard what you wanted to hear, you wouldn't see what I didn't want you to see. And that's how I operated, and that's how I thought I got away with everything, or I got through it. But the truth is, I didn't thrive. I simply survived an abusive upbringing by creating dysfunctional programming inside my own mind. That's what I'm unwinding here and untangling. It felt like a web of lies, a web of untruths, and so as I talked about earlier today, physically I was able to start working towards a better future by getting in the gym and working on exercise and taking walks and working on my nutrition and changing my chemistry from the inside out. I was able to use medication when I was in the throes of those negative places in order to find some semblance of clarity. And after exhausting the medical route and exhausting the physical route, only then did the door open for me to feel strong enough to talk about all of these things. And in truth, even when me and my mom and my sister first started sitting down and talking about these things, I had the belief that what we were talking about could help us feel better. I just wasn't sure that it would actually help us feel better. Now, 1,000%, based on the evidence and the replies that I've had in private from well over 15 to 20 people privately who have known me or known Tony or known some part of my family, that what we're talking about here has allowed them to feel better, has allowed them to feel like what we're doing is good for other people. That's how I know talking about it is also important and also something that needs to be done. If I were to sit here and ask myself objectively, John, what would you say to your 20-year-old self? To let you know that everything was going to be okay? I would say, that's a lie. I know you're not okay, and that's okay. Hang in there. Learn everything that you're going to go through. Understand that it's part of a bigger picture and that it will give you a gift in the here and the now 20 years down the road. And then you'll understand the struggle and the pain and the strife that you went through, what it was actually for. I don't believe I was gifted all of this trauma, all of this pain, all of this abuse to take it to my grave and stay silent about it. I also don't believe I was gifted this to hurt other people, to shit on anybody, or to make anybody feel worse. One thing my grandfather told me, and this was a grandfather that I had historically some issues with. However, I can look back and be reminded of this. He said, John, if somebody allows you to borrow something from them, or you borrow something from somebody, make sure you leave it better than you found it. And the truth is, my life is borrowed time. I'm borrowing time until I'm no longer alive. And so this time, from the here and the now until the day I die, I want to make sure that it is worthwhile. And if you come in contact with me here as I was laying this out in my time here, I want it to leave you better than it found you. Is what I'm saying today, does it make you feel worse? Does it make you feel more horrible about yourself? Man, I really, really hope not. And as it's been said, you can hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which one adds up first. So hope isn't a really good strategy. However, because I believe what I'm doing comes from a good, intentive place, comes from good intentions, I believe at the very least, this will not leave you off worse than I found you. And so my whole life now, I can see it very, very clearly. And it's starting to fall into place if I look backwards through my life. I can see how the dots connect. Losing my brother and losing my cousin opened up the door for me to rebuild myself physically, which got me inside the door with a medical practitioner and allowed me to start talking about these things without them re-traumatizing me, without them hurting me, without them pushing me further away from my goal, to where now I'm able to put them out in public because I don't believe that this is hurtful. That is not my intention. If anything, the only person I could possibly intend to hurt is myself. As I said, it does not feel good right now to be sitting here telling you all of these things that I have done, that I stole from people that I loved, that I hurt people and things in my life that I loved, that I took my hurt out on others and made them hurt. That isn't okay. That's how I know I am not okay. That's how I know you are not okay. There is no way, if we're being 1,000% truthful with each other, how we are brought into this world, slapped on the ass after being pulled out of our moms, to how we treat each other while we're in this world, to how we leave this world. There is no way that you can be okay with that. And I believe if we all can get to the point where we can speak the truth about what happened to us, we can be okay with that. Because I can tell you, the guy 3, 5, 10 years ago, before the tornado hit my gym, before I had the thought that I was not okay, before I looked in the mirror and said those words to myself, you are not okay, I would have never talked about this. I would have never said anything about it. And I would still be living a life that was hurting me, that was hurting other people, that wasn't changing anything, that was doing nobody any good. and would not have been worthwhile to continue. If I were to ask myself one thing as I close this podcast that I wanted you to take out of today's podcast, it would be to speak your truth. To say what you know you need to say, even though it is painful to say it. What's holding you back is fear. You don't have a space where you feel like you can say it. You don't have an environment that you feel like you can say it. You're not sure if it's even truthful to say. That's what I know. In order to be able to say what you need to say, I would ask you if you are willing to physically work through it, to actually talk about it with somebody else, or do you need some kind of medical intervention to allow you to start speaking? And here's a neat little interesting tip I'll finish up with at the end. Do you want to know what the secret is to dealing with your mental health? Get an animal. Talk to that animal. Listen to the animal as it looks back at you with its eyes. And implement what the animal says. And you can't go wrong. Because at the end of the day, we're all just a bunch of animals, aren't we? Come here. Come here. Whoop. Hi. See, when you have animals and they love you, they'll bring the best out of you. This is my Cinnabon. I love her. And animals can be some of the best thing you ever do for yourself. Get yourself an animal. See how much they love you. Because if you need a secret, this is the secret to life. Speak to the animals, and they will bring everything they can outside of you. Say hi, Cindy Bun Bun Bun. Thank you for being here with me today. I'll ask one favor. Is there anything you need to hear in order to be a better leader? Is there anything I could have said or unpacked or talked about more? Is there anything you would want to see another human be honest about that they're not historically honest about? I know I want to see our leaders just tell the truth. We all know when we've seen a politician or a sports person or a business person stand up and say something inauthentically and get away with it. We all know somebody who has said, yes, I am going to do this, and has done that. And then said, I never did that. That didn't happen. That's not true. Or they didn't really address it. It would just be really nice if people, all people, starting with me, which is why I'm doing this, would stand up and say, I'm fucked up. I know I'm fucked up. I apologize that my fucked upness became part of you and hurt you. And I'd like to know if there's anything I can do to heal that, to make it better, or to allow us both to move on with our lives. Thanks for listening. And I really look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to knowing, if at all possible, that this was valuable and worthwhile to you. And I look forward to getting to know you, the real you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to our show. If you're interested in how we've gotten this far, I've put together a small guide that has a 3-step process at no cost. You can get that at www.iamnotok.com/truth. www.iamnotok.com/truth. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you on the inside. Be well.